So, Vince McMahon recently announced his retirement from WWE. And it's something I've been pondering on quite a bit because I have been watching wrestling since I was just a wee little lad, if you will. And there were a few things that I found interesting about this whole situation. As we know, I don't think that this was purely a 77-year-old man wanting to retire from what he loves. In fact, I'm pretty sure this was a forced retirement, rather. And it's specifically, as of now, which is July the 26th, 2022. As of now, he has spent $14.6 million in, I guess you'd say, hush money to people who he was involved in extramarital affairs with. And that's a whole nother subject that we can get into in a little while. But what really surprised me, well, not really, I don't guess, surprised a lot of people anyway, was the way that WWE as an on-screen product has handled all this. Like, Stephanie McMahon came out there Friday night and led the crowd in a thank you Vince chant, basically ignoring all the allegations and whatnot and controversy that is surrounding her father. And although I find it admirable for anybody to support their parent that is going through something like he is, if she truly believes that he is not guilty of anything, it's a little weird. And with the climate being what it is today, I think that the approach of them not saying anything at all would have probably been just as effective as a thank you Vince type hashtag and chant. But I digress. But what I was thinking of is the fact that we all as wrestling fans have put Vince on this pedestal as if he's the greatest promoter of all time. And I guess on paper, maybe that's the case. But the truth of the matter is, and a question that I would like to propose to anybody who really thinks that he has been just an unbelievable creative outlet, is this. If a major league hitter has the most at-bats and ends up with a very long career and has the most hits at the end of his career, is he the greatest baseball player of all time? Or, let's take basketball for example. If the guy who took the most shots in the NBA ends up with the most field goals at the end of his career, is he the greatest basketball player of all time? Just because somebody sells a lot of product does not make them the greatest of all time. You think about the hours and hours and hours of programming that Vince McMahon has put on screen since he has been doing this. And it is unbelievable, to quote the man back in his commentary days. As a matter of fact, it's downright absurd to praise his moments of greatness just simply because there's so much material here. If he was a writer, he would be like L. Ron Hubbard. He would be a guy who wrote tons and tons and tons of fictional novels, and only, and has Scientology and a few other high points that are held in high regard by some people. But I guess what I'm saying, yes, there are some fantastic WrestleMania moments, and we've got Hulkamania, we've got Macho Man, we've got, the Ultimate Warrior's rise to prominence, The Undertaker streak, we got Mr. WrestleMania, Shawn Michaels. And yes, Vince McMahon had a lot to do with all those creations becoming what they became. But the guys who actually executed those characters had just as much, especially the guys like Undertaker, who wrestled there forever and ever. Shawn Michaels as well. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, with all this programming that he put out there over the years, and there was some really, really, really bad stuff, even in the quote-unquote heyday, whether it been the 80s or the 90s, there was some really bad stuff back then, and I watched it all back then. I admittedly do not watch WWE as much as I used to, but I just find it a little ridiculous to put this guy on a pedestal. Alright, now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about his proprieties and the things that he got into, his extramarital affairs. Alright. Number one, he should have spent his own money, but apparently he was hiding it from his wife, is what it seems. And all this is speculation. We don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. But if you watch WWE for any length of time, you know that the mind of Vince McMahon is warped. He has a very, very warped sense of humor, and obviously travels down some dark paths in his spare time to not only come up with some of the ideas and put them on screen, but just to even think of those ideas would be bizarre and degenerative behavior. Okay, so another thing, at Vince McMahon's level of fame and fortune, and the key word there, fortune, he has access to things that normal people do not. And hey, he's human. He makes mistakes. I give him that. I am not, not throwing him into the pit, even though, he seems to travel on the dark side. I'm sure his friends and family know a side of Vince that maybe we don't see as much. And I know the evil genius that he plays on TV is not his real character as a man. But the fact that these elite people with all this money keep getting in trouble for their, I guess you'd say, extramarital affairs or other sexual type behavior and misbehavior, really, on a lot of accounts. They have access to a lot of things that normal people do not. That's being my point. And I think that if a lot of us were being honest with ourselves, it would be a little more hard to judge somebody who has access, if you had that access as well. And yeah, that's just a fact. We don't know what it's like to not have to spend a whole lot of time working and actually be 100% free to create something like he has. And then not only that, but when the lights go down, what that feeling must be like to try to turn it off. So, you know, whether it be drugs, sex, or whatever he gets into in his spare time, it's obviously something that has overtaken him so badly that he spent $14 million on it to try to hide whatever it is. So this is probably going to get worse before it gets better as far as the reporting on all this. And if any of these people actually come out and give detailed accounts of what Vince has been up to when the curtain goes down. And hey, I think that it'll be interesting. It'll make for a lot of books and documentaries. But if he's done some really, really bad stuff, which that's a lot of money, so he may have, there'll be no justice for it. He's 77 years old, and you know, by the time he's either punished or just leaves this world, there'll be no justice for it on this earth. So we'll just leave it at that. Maybe some justice somewhere else, but not here. So that's just my thoughts on Vince McMahon's retirement and where it is right now, because it's a developing story.